Hello everybody, this is the Vikstrand. So when I started watching this movie, I barely knew anything about it. I kind of understood that it was based on this, silly cartoon show from the late 60s. Kind of like an Inspector Gadget / Inspector Clouseau kind of a thing, with bumbling idiot and, a top hat wearing, mustache twirling and the cape throwing cartoon villain of the most cartoon villainous art. And when this movie started, I thought, is this going to be, one of these horrible live action versions like your Yogi Bear or your Mr. Magoo or something like that? I mean, Brendan Fraser is kind of an okay actor and he can be really funny sometimes, but I don't know, I didn't like George of the Jungle either that much, so I don't know if this is gonna work. It turned out that this thing worked. This was surprisingly funny, not belly laughingly funny or anything like that, but it was way better than I expected it to be. But what is it about, and do you think that you will like this movie or not? This is my review of Duddly Do Right. So the latest evil plan from Snidey Whiplash, aka Alfred Molina, who is chewing the scenery and seems to have the time of his life. Man, he is overacting so fantastically awesome in this movie. His plan that he's planning from is not very secret lair, when here he has a surprisingly huge amount of henchmen. Seriously, one of the funniest things in this movie is the extreme amount of people he has. Where did he get them from? Anyway, he's going to turn semi-Pleasant Valley into Whiplash City. He's going to stage a gold rush. So it is up to complete airhead Duddly Do Right, played by Brendan Fraser, to try to stop him. He's also trying to win the heart of Nell, played by Sarah Jessica Parker, who is actively trying to act like an even bigger dunderhead than what she did in Hocus Pocus. It's difficult to really figure out which one of those is the biggest airhead. Is Duddly Do Right going to be able to win the heart of Nell, who gets kidnapped apparently more than Princess Peach? That, however, plays kind of second fiddle to a bunch of silly sketches, pratfalls, and a bunch of insanity, and some dance numbers performed by what may be the least authentic Native Americans that has ever been portrayed on screen. So this is one of these movies where you can, slide your glasses so far up your nose it ends up in another zip code and say, well, this is not very good, and this is, all silly comedy, and it might be one of the lowest forms of comedy that you can, ever hope to find. Yeah, you can do that fairly easy, but, step by step, this movie won me over. I think it has something to do with the fact that they commit to this one. They really committed to this one, and the longer the movie went, the more insane and the more madness was injected to the whole thing. I mean, it isn't high art, but this was surprisingly funny, and it was also surprisingly endearing, and it is difficult not to like Duddly Do Right, despite being a slack-jawed, empty-headed numbskull. The movie is extremely entertaining, and I always have a soft spot for movies that has narration in it, where the narration explain what happens and sometimes, interacts with the story itself. That is something that for some reason always works for me. Duddly Do Right is a movie that's not going to fit everybody, but this was surprisingly funny, and it was surprisingly endearing, and the characters are just so likable, and they seem to have such a nice time that I'm okay with it. It's weird. And whenever you have Eric Idle or, on your movie set, your movie will ultimately improve. It's not a movie I'm going to watch over and over again, but it was a surprisingly good movie considering, the low score it has on IMDb and the more than sketchy track records of live action versions of cartoon movies that had been released, around the same time, like your, Inspector Gadget or the aforementioned Mr. Magoo and Yogi Bear. And because they committed to the whole thing, and because they embraced the stupidity and the insanity, it somehow worked. And also extra plus points for Elliot Gould as the chief of the Kumquats. That was sure something. When I started watching Duddly Do Right, I thought to myself, well, this is going to be complete nonsense and silliness, and I'm probably going to give this like 11 or 12 points or something like that. But it was a surprisingly endearing movie, and I couldn't help but being entertained by this complete insanity. And I'm giving this movie 67 points. I think this movie is really entertaining. Sure, the characters are one-dimensional, but on the other hand, when they embraced how one-dimensional it is and make that almost part of the joke, that is where the movie actually works. And because they have Alfred Molina, and because they have Sarah Jessica Parker, and because they have Brendan Fraser, this movie worked. If they would have had, you know, Johnny Dumbfuck or anything like that, this movie would not have worked. But because they have them, this movie works. So what do you think about Duddly Do Right? Comment below, and I'll see you next time from Well So and So reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.